There are moments in a man's life that define him, moments of profound decision that set the course for the rest of his days. Graduations, marriage proposals, the birth of a child. For me, that defining moment involved 75 horsepower, a metric ton of bright yellow steel, and a beige Toyota Sienna that had looked at me the wrong way. But to understand how a perfectly reasonable, gainfully employed software developer ends up in a sun-drenched suburban street, heart thumping with the rhythm of a diesel engine, waging a one-man war against a minivan, you need to understand the events that led to the madness. You need to understand the dream, the project, and the person who stood in its way. You need to understand, Carol, it all started, as most American dreams do, with a crippling amount of debt. I had just closed on my first house. For 12 years, I had coded my way through a series of cramped, soul-crushing apartments, each with a view of a brick wall and a unique collection of mysterious plumbing sounds. My life's savings, once a proud and plump digital number on a screen, now looked like it had been in a bar fight with a mortgage down payment and lost. But I had the keys. I had a 2-car garage. I had a patch of green earth that was legally, unequivocally mine. The house itself was fine, a standard-issue late 90s suburban box. But the backyard was a canvas. A sad, patchy, weed-infested canvas, sure, but it was brimming with potential. While the previous owner saw a lumpy lawn that was a chore to mow, I saw nirvana. I'm a remote software engineer. My job is to sit in a dark room and wrangle ones and zeros into submission. My sanctuary, my reward for a day spent untangling someone else's buggy code, was not going to be a damp basement man cave. It was going to be an outdoor paradise. I had the blueprint sketched out on a dozen legal pads. I had a Pinterest board so detailed it probably qualified for its own zoning permit. This wasn't just a deck. This was to be the nerd nirvana, a monument to escaping the rental market. I envisioned a multi-level composite deck, the color of a fine whiskey, cascading down to a flagstone patio. In the center of that patio, a built-in gas fire pit that would roar to life with the flick of a switch. Tucked into the corner, an outdoor kitchen with a granite countertop and a built-in Traeger grill. And maybe, if I sold a kidney or got a lucky stock option payout, a small, elegant plunge pool for those sweltering August afternoons. It was going to be glorious. For the first week, I lived in a state of blissful ignorance. I ate takeout on cardboard boxes, my voice echoed in the empty rooms, and I spent hours just staring out the back window, superimposing my grand vision onto the sad reality of the crabgrass. I was King Alexander, first of his name, lord of the unfinished basement, and protector of the patchy realm. Then the letter came. It wasn't mailed, it was affixed, taped to my freshly painted front door with an aggressive amount of clear packing tape, sealed in a crisp, cream-colored envelope that felt both expensive and judgmental. It bore the insignia of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. I took it inside, handling it like it was a pipe bomb. My previous apartment buildings had landlords, sure, but an HOA? That was a new level of bureaucracy I wasn't prepared for. I had vaguely recalled signing a thick booklet of rules at closing, dismissing it as boilerplate nonsense. I was about to learn just how wrong I was. The letter was a masterclass in the art of the passive-aggressive welcome. It started with a chipper, "On behalf of the board, welcome to our wonderful community," and then immediately pivoted into a thinly veiled list of my transgressions. "We just wanted to provide a gentle reminder of some of our community's core standards to help you settle in," I read aloud to my empty office. My voice echoed slightly. "We notice your lawn has exceeded the maximum permissible height of 4 inches as per bylaw 6.2. I looked out the window. Was it a little shaggy? Maybe. But 4 inches? Were they out here with a tiny ruler and a level? Furthermore, all municipal waste receptacles must be stored out of public view, except on designated collection days. Bylaw 8.4. My empty trash and recycling bins were sitting innocently by the side of my garage. Apparently, their very existence was an affront to the delicate sensibilities of whispering pines. Then, I saw the sentence that made my blood run cold. It was highlighted in a nauseating shade of yellow. Finally, please remember that any and all exterior improvements or modifications, including but not limited to patios, decks, fencing, significant landscaping, and satellite dishes, require pre-approval from the Architectural Review Committee, ARC, to ensure they meet our community's aesthetic standards. A Form 7B application package can be found on the Community Web portal. Failure to comply may result in daily fines and a stop work order. May? That was cute. A little verbal trapdoor to give them wiggle room. I slumped into my gaming chair, the only piece of furniture in the room. I looked at my glorious, hand-drawn blueprints. I looked at the threatening, cream-colored letter. My dream of a backyard oasis had just run headfirst into a wall of red tape. The fun police had my address, and apparently they had a web portal. A couple of days later, I was in the front yard, wrestling with the assembly instructions for a new lawnmower that seemed to have more parts than a lunar lander, when I felt it. A prickling on the back of my neck. The unmistakable sensation of being watched. I glanced up. Across the street, on the porch of a meticulously maintained colonial, a woman was pretending to read a magazine. She was in her mid-50s, dressed in a powder blue cardigan despite the 80-degree heat, and her posture was ramrod straight. She held the magazine up, but her eyes were locked onto me over the top of it, a pair of predator drones scanning for violations. After a moment, she seemed to come to a decision. She folded the magazine with a snap, placed it on a wicker table, and began to stride across the street. Her gait wasn't a walk, it was a march, each step filled with purpose and an unspoken authority. "Hi there," she chirped, the sound a little too bright. "Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm Carol Peterson. I live just across the way." "Alex," I said, wiping a greasy hand on my jeans. "Nice to meet you." "We are so thrilled to have a new family join us," she said, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Those eyes were busy. They darted from my half-assembled lawnmower to my slightly too long grass, to the trash cans I had hastily hidden behind a bush. It was a full property diagnostic, executed in under 3 seconds. "I'm the HOA treasurer," she added, as if that explained everything. "And I also sit on the Architectural Review Committee." Of course you do, I thought. "Ah, well, I got your letter," I said, forcing a grin. "Just getting started on my compliance checklist. Wouldn't want the grass police to haul me away." My attempt at humor landed with a thud. Her smile tightened by a millimeter. "It's just about protecting our shared investment, Alex. Our property values are a reflection of our commitment to standards. I'm sure you understand." "Totally," I lied. Her gaze drifted past me, toward my backyard. "I couldn't help but notice you have some stakes and string laid out back there. Planning a little vegetable garden?" The question was innocent. The tone was not. It was an interrogation disguised as a pleasantry. "Something like that," I said, deciding to just get it over with. "A big, woody garden, with stairs and a place to put a grill. You know, a deck." Carol's eyes lit up, but not with joy. It was the thrill of the hunt. "Oh, how wonderful. A deck can be a lovely addition. Then you'll be submitting your plans to the ARC, of course. Form 7B. You can download it from the portal." She said portal like it was the gateway to a higher plane of existence. "Just be sure to double-check the pre-approved materials list. We don't allow for exotic woods or non-standard paint and stain colors. It disrupts the community's visual harmony." I stared at her. I was building a deck in my own backyard, a place no one could see without trespassing, and she was talking about visual harmony, like we were curating the Louvre. "Right, Form 7B, I said, my voice flat. "I'll get right on that." "Excellent," she beamed, her mission accomplished. "We're just so happy to have proactive neighbors. It makes everything run so much more smoothly." She gave me one last, evaluative look and marched back across the street to her beige fortress. I stood there, clutching a wrench, the half-built lawnmower at my feet. My dream wasn't just on hold. It was now subject to review by a committee, and its chief inquisitor was a woman who thought a cedar deck was exotic. I knew, with the certainty of a programmer finding a missing semicolon, that this was not going to be easy. The following weeks were a bureaucratic nightmare. Form 7B was not a form. It was a Tolkien-esque quest. It demanded architectural drawings to scale, a complete list of materials with manufacturer SQs, soil drainage plans, and a color swatch for the deck stain that had to be chosen from a palette of 3 equally boring shades of brown: sensible beige, disappointed taupe, and aggressive walnut. I submitted my package. It was rejected. Reason: proposed railing design features a 4.5-inch gap between balusters, exceeding the 4-inch maximum for child safety. My house had no children. I had no children. My most frequent visitor was the pizza delivery guy. I revised the plans and resubmitted. 2 weeks later, a miracle. I received a stamped letter of approval. It felt less like a victory and more like a parole hearing that had gone my way. I immediately called the contractor I had lined up. His name was Frank Kowalski. The next Monday morning, Frank's crew arrived. Frank himself was a barrel-chested man in his late 40s with a glorious Boston accent that felt wonderfully out of place in our bland suburban landscape. He surveyed my backyard, looked at my approved plans, and gave a grunt of satisfaction. "All right, kid," he said, clapping me on the shoulder hard enough to realign my spine. "Got your permit from the city, got your love letter from the fun police. You ready to make some noise?" "Frank, I have been ready since the moment I signed that mortgage," I said. "Just a heads up. See the lady across the street? The one in the window pretending to prune a plastic plant?" Frank squinted, then let out a low chuckle. "Ah, a watcher. Every neighborhood's got one. Don't worry, my guys are pros. We keep the site clean. We don't start the saws before 8 a.m. sharp. And the radio stays on the classic rock station at a respectable volume. She'll have to find something else to power her rage machine." The work began. The sound of saws and hammers was music to my ears. The sad patch of grass was scraped away. Holes were dug. Concrete was poured. My nerd nirvana was slowly taking shape. And through it all, Carol watched. She was a constant, unnerving presence. She'd be out sweeping her already immaculate porch whenever a truck arrived. She'd, coincidentally, decide to get her mail the moment Frank's crew took a water break. I'd be in my office on a conference call and see the telltale glint of a smartphone lens from behind her curtains. Frank's crew noticed, too. They started a little betting pool on how many Carol sightings they'd log before lunch. The record was 7. The first real flashpoint occurred about a week into the project. It was the day the composite decking material was scheduled to arrive. A massive flatbed truck rumbled down our quiet street, and my heart did a little flutter. This was the good stuff. The expensive, low-maintenance stuff that wouldn't give me splinters. The street in front of my house was wide, but on the opposite side, Carol's side, the curb was painted a furious, angry red. "Fire lane, no parking," was stenciled in huge white letters on the asphalt. The truck driver, a logistics pro trying to be efficient, started to angle his truck so he could unload directly onto my driveway. To do this, His rear tires breached the sacred space of the fire lane by maybe 2 feet. He hadn't even killed the engine before Carol's front door flew open. She was a blur of righteous indignation, power walking across the street with her phone already out, recording. "Excuse me," she shouted, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Excuse me. This is a designated fire lane. You cannot park here." The driver, a burly guy with a tattoo of a bulldog on his forearm, leaned out of the cab. "Ma'am, I'll be 5 minutes. Just gotta get this lumber off." I jogged out to play mediator. "Carol, it's fine. It's my delivery. He's just making room." "It is not fine, Alex," she snapped, not taking her eyes off the truck's rear axle. "Rules are for everyone, for a reason. What if there was a fire? At the Hendersons' house down the street. Every second counts. The bylaws are perfectly clear. I can quote them for you. Section 9, subsection C. No vehicle shall be stopped or left standing in a designated fire lane for any reason whatsoever." Frank wandered over from the backyard, wiping concrete dust on his jeans. "Lady, relax. The fire department could land a 747 on this street and still have room for a parade. We're not blocking anything. He'll be gone before you can type up a strongly worded email." This was, I would learn, the absolute wrong thing to say to Carol. Questioning her authority was like telling the sun it was a little too bright. "I am documenting this flagrant violation," she announced to the street at large. "You have 60 seconds to move this vehicle completely out of the fire lane, or I am calling the parking authority, the non-emergency police line, and reporting this breach to the full HOA board." The driver let out a string of curses under his breath that I'm pretty sure violated several other bylaws. Not wanting to get his company a ticket, he sighed, put the truck in gear, and pulled forward. He was now forced to park in the middle of the street, blocking one entire lane of traffic, and the unloading process would be infinitely more difficult. Carol watched, arms crossed, a smug little smile on her face. Her work was done. The fire lane was safe. Property values were secure. The delivery took an extra hour. I watched the crew struggle, carrying heavy bundles of composite boards across the street, all because of a 2-foot infraction. And I stood there, thinking about her words. For any reason whatsoever. It was the whatsoever that got me. The sheer, unyielding, context-free absolutism of it all. She wasn't worried about a fire. She was high on the fumes of her own petty authority. I filed the interaction away in the back of my mind. The fire lane, her weapon of choice. It would become important later. With the delivery fiasco behind us, I hoped we could settle into a rhythm. Frank's crew was efficient, my deck was starting to look like an actual deck, and I was beginning to dream of that first stake on the Traeger. My hope lasted approximately 48 hours. The next front in the Whispering Pines war opened on my property line. Frank's guys were using a small 2-man auger to dig the final post holes for the deck's foundation. The work was neat, the holes were precise, and it was all happening a good 6 feet inside my yard. That's when my next-door neighbor, Dave, first entered the story. Dave was a retiree in his 60s, a man whose entire philosophy could be summarized by a Weber grill and a well-stocked beer fridge. He gave me a friendly wave from his patio. "Looking good, Alex," he yelled over the putt-putt of the auger. "Gonna be a hell of a spot for a cold one." "That's the plan, Dave," I yelled back. The friendly neighborhood vibe was shattered by the sharp click-clack of sensible shoes on asphalt. Carol had appeared, seemingly out of thin air, standing at the edge of my lawn with a tape measure in her hand like it was a scepter. She wasn't looking at the deck. She was looking at the ground. "Cease this activity immediately," she commanded. The 2 guys on the auger, both built like refrigerators, looked at each other and then at me. I walked over, sighing. "What's the problem, Carol?" "You're digging," she said, pointing a trembling finger at a pile of dirt. "You are causing soil erosion that is threatening my azaleas." I looked across the expanse of Dave's perfectly manicured lawn, and then across his driveway to Carol's property. Her prize-winning azaleas were a good 50 feet away. A different zip code, practically. "Carol? Her azaleas are over there," Dave chimed in, wandering over to his side of our shared property line. "He'd need a frickin' backhoe to bother those things." Carol shot him a look that could curdle milk. "The CC&Rs, Dave, which you should try reading sometime, strictly forbid any excavation within 24 inches of a property line without a formal geological survey and the installation of a root barrier." Frank, drawn by the sudden silence of the auger, came trudging around the house. "Lady, for the love of God, we're digging post holes, not the Panama Canal. Your damn flowers are fine. Show me the rule." That was all the invitation she needed. She whipped out her phone, already open to a bookmarked PDF of the HOA bylaws. Page 47, Appendix C, subsection 2. Subsurface soil disruption. "And furthermore," she added, her voice rising with triumph, "your crew's music is audible from my kitchen window. That is a clear noise violation as per Bylaw 11.5. The music in question was a Journey song playing softly from a small portable radio. I'm pretty sure a passing bird would have been a greater noise violation. "Give it a rest, Carol," Dave said, taking a sip of his beer. "The only thing disturbed around here is you. These guys are working hard. Why don't you go polish your HOA plaque or something?" Carol's face went rigid. "This doesn't concern you, Dave. This is an official HOA matter between the board and Mr. She paused, as if my name was distasteful. "Alex." I could see the project grinding to a halt before my eyes. Frank was already looking at his watch. A delay meant money. To keep the peace, to keep the work going, I caved. "Fine," I said through gritted teeth. "Fine. We'll put up a fence." I paid Frank's guys an extra $200 to install a temporary silt fence along the property line, a ridiculous little black fabric wall designed to stop a landslide that was never going to happen. It was absurd. It was unnecessary. And Carol watched them install every single stake, a smug, satisfied smirk playing on her lips. The war wasn't about the rules anymore. It was about her winning. That night, I updated my backyard blueprint. In the margins, I drew a little catapult aimed directly at Carol's azaleas. It was childish, but it made me feel better. The true turning point, the moment the conflict went from a cold war of bureaucratic attrition to a hot war of petty vengeance, came 3 days later. I call it the Great Sprinkler Offensive. I walked into my kitchen at 6:30 a.m. to make coffee. As I waited for the Keurig to gurgle to life, I glanced out the window at my project. And my heart sank. The entire patio base, a perfectly leveled, compacted bed of sand and gravel, was a swamp. It was a shimmering, puddled mess. I blinked, confused. It hadn't rained. Then I saw it. A graceful arc of water, glittering in the early morning sun, sailing over Carol's lawn and landing with pinpoint precision in the middle of my worksite. I followed the arc back to its source, one of Carol's sprinkler heads, and then I saw another doing the exact same thing from a different angle. This was no accident. The wind hadn't shifted. This was a targeted, pre-dawn suburban waterboarding. The precision was surgical. My beautiful patio base, which Frank's guys had spent an entire afternoon perfecting, looked like a sad, gritty soup. It was a declaration of war, written in city water. Something inside me snapped. The part of my brain that counseled patience and diplomacy went on an indefinite vacation. I didn't yell. I didn't storm over. I put on my shoes, walked out the front door, and crossed the street with an eerie calm. She was already out there, of course, watering a pot of petunias with a little pink watering can, the picture of domestic innocence. "Carol," I said. My voice was quiet, level. "Good morning, Alex," she said, not making eye contact. "Your sprinklers are flooding my construction site." She finally looked up, feigning surprise. "Oh dear, are they really? The wind must be something fierce this morning. I'll have to take a look at them later today." "The wind didn't unscrew the nozzle, point it 180 degrees, and triple the water pressure, Carol," I said, my voice dropping even lower. "Turn them off, now." She gave me a serene, infuriating smile. "I'm on a pre-programmed watering schedule, Alex. It was approved by the city for optimal water conservation. I can't possibly interrupt the cycle. Think of the environment. Think of the environment." She had weaponized conservationism. I just stared at her for a long moment. The image of my soupy patio base burned into my retinas. Then I turned and walked away without another word. I went back to my house. I went into the garage. I grabbed my longest garden hose and attached the most powerful jet stream-capable nozzle I owned. I dragged it to the edge of my property, right by her driveway. I stood there, hose in hand, and waited. At 7 a.m. sharp, her sprinkler system hissed and shut off. The moment it did, I turned my hose on full blast. I began to water the thin 2-foot strip of my lawn that bordered her concrete driveway. Accidentally, of course. The powerful stream of water shot across my grass and directly onto her freshly washed beige minivan. I gave the van a thorough high-pressure rinse, paying special attention to the windows and door handles. Then, I adjusted my aim slightly, coincidentally, drenching the pristine concrete walkway leading to her front door. I just stood there, a placid look on my face, for 10 solid minutes, methodically soaking everything on her side of the property line. I didn't see her, but I could feel her watching from the window. The message was clear. The gloves were off. My inner catapult was no longer a drawing. It was armed and ready. My retaliation did not go unnoticed. A few days later, I was walking to my mailbox when I was ambushed. "Alex, we need to have a word!" It was Carol, and she wasn't alone. She had flanked herself with the other 2 members of the HOA board. There was Gerald, a man who looked like he was perpetually apologizing for his own existence, and Brenda, a woman with a permanently confused expression who seemed to have wandered into the meeting by mistake. They were standing in Carol's driveway, blocking my path. It was an emergency session. "Your hostile and retaliatory water hosing incident was witnessed by several neighbors," Carol began, her voice dripping with condemnation. "It was an act of aggression." "Aggression?" I said, feigning shock. "My project site was flooded by a mysterious aquatic event originating from your property. I was merely returning the water. Think of it as recycling." Gerald cleared his throat nervously. "Now, let's all try to be civil. Alex, Carol has also brought it to our attention that your crew's portable toilet is partially visible from the street. That's a clear aesthetic violation." I stared at him. "The porta-potty is behind a 6-foot privacy screen that I paid for because of a bogus soil erosion complaint. Where would you like them to go, Gerald? Your prize-winning petunias?" "Are the petunias the ones next to the azaleas?" Brenda asked, looking lost. Carol ignored her. "The point is, Alex, there has been a pattern of complaints. The noise, the dirt, the unauthorized parking in the fire lane, the general disruption. And now, this open hostility. We are putting you on official notice." "Official notice of what?" I asked. "Completing my fully approved project?" "We are instituting a new provisional policy," she announced, a gleam in her eye. "Effective immediately. Any further deliveries of heavy equipment or bulk materials will require a 48-hour written notice to the board. Furthermore, all such deliveries must be scheduled outside of peak community hours." I blinked. peak community hours? What the hell are peak community hours? That would be from 8 to 10 a.m., noon to 2 p.m., and 4 to 6 p.m., she recited, clearly having prepared this in advance. Times when residents are most active. It was the most ridiculous, transparently targeted rule I had ever heard. She had created a set of bureaucratic landmines designed specifically for me. This wasn't a governing body. It was a 3-person cult with a laminated copy of the bylaws and a personal vendetta. And I knew, with the cold, hard certainty of a fatal syntax error, that my final, biggest delivery was going to be a problem. The granite countertop, the crown jewel of my outdoor kitchen. It was heavy, it was expensive, and it was coming next Tuesday. I could feel the impending confrontation in my bones. The day arrived. It was a beautiful, sunny Tuesday. The deck was built, the patio was laid, and the base for the outdoor kitchen island stood waiting for its glorious granite capstone. This was it, the last major piece of the puzzle. I had followed the new rule to the letter. I had sent a formal email to Carol, Gerald, and Brenda 52 hours in advance, informing them that a flatbed truck would be arriving at 10 a.m. to deliver a countertop. I specified that heavy equipment would be required to move it. I got a curt, one-word reply from Carol. Noted. At 9:55 a.m., I was waiting in my driveway, practically vibrating with a mixture of excitement and dread. Frank pulled up in his F-250, towing a trailer. On that trailer sat a small but powerful-looking yellow bulldozer. "Morning, kid," he grunted. "Big day. Let's get this slab in place so I can get my dozer back to a real job site." "Morning, Frank. Let's just hope for a smooth operation." My hope died a quick and brutal death. At 10:01 a.m., the flatbed truck rumbled into view. It was even bigger than I expected, carrying a single, massive slab of polished black granite that shone like obsidian in the sun. As the truck slowed to a stop in front of my house, I saw movement across the street. Carol's garage door slid open. Her beige Toyota Sienna minivan reversed out. But she didn't turn and drive away. Instead, she drove slowly, deliberately across the street. She pulled her van perfectly parallel to the curb, directly in the middle of the fire lane, positioning it so the flatbed truck had absolutely no room to maneuver or unload. She put the emergency brake on with a loud click. Then she got out, locked the door, and without so much as a glance in my direction, marched back into her house and shut the door. It was a perfect, silent, and utterly devastating act of war. Oh, a blockade. Frank, the truck driver, and I just stood there in the middle of the street, jaws agape. "You have got to be kidding me," Frank finally breathed, his face a mixture of awe and fury. "Is she certifiably insane?" "That's not insanity, Frank," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "That's strategy. She knows the truck can't stay here double parked. She knows she can't be legally towed from a fire lane unless a cop orders it, and that could take an hour or more. She's trying to get the delivery sent back." The truck driver confirmed my fears. He was on his phone with his dispatcher. "Yeah, it's a no-go. Some lady parked her car. No, I can't get around it. My schedule says I got 15 minutes on site, boss. After that, the slab goes back to the warehouse." 15 minutes. This was her checkmate move. All my planning, all the money, all the ridiculous silt fences and rescheduled deliveries, about to be defeated by a 2018 Toyota Sienna and a woman with a bottomless well of spite. I looked at the minivan, smug and beige. I looked at Frank, who was already shaking his head in defeat. And then I looked at the beautiful, powerful, bright yellow bulldozer sitting on his trailer, and a glorious, terrible, magnificent idea began to bloom in the barren wasteland of my patience. The world seemed to slow down. The hum of the flatbed's engine, the distant chirping of birds, the frantic voice of the driver on the phone, it all faded into a dull roar. All I could see were the three key elements on my suburban chessboard: the immovable minivan, the unstoppable delivery deadline, and my queen, a 75-horsepower ditch witch bulldozer. A slow, dangerous smile spread across my face. I turned to Frank. "Frank," I said, my voice steady, "how fast can you get that bulldozer off the trailer?" Frank's eyes widened. He looked from me to the minivan, then to the dozer, and back to me. A flicker of understanding, then horror, then a spark of something that looked suspiciously like grudging respect dawned on his face. "Kid, no, don't. Don't you even think about it," he whispered, like we were defusing a bomb. "They will arrest you. They will sue you into the Stone Age. Your face will be on the evening news." "Frank," I said, my voice filled with a newfound, zealous clarity. "Let's review the facts. Fact 1. That vehicle," I pointed, "is illegally parked in a designated emergency fire lane. Fact 2. Said illegal parking is obstructing both commerce and public safety. The sign says no parking. It doesn't say no parking unless you're doing it to be a vicious hag. I am not going to damage her property, Frank. I am merely going to assist in the clearing of a vital emergency thoroughfare." "You're gonna assist with a bulldozer?" he sputtered. "Unload the dozer, Frank," I said. It wasn't a question. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a drumbeat of adrenaline and righteous fury. I pulled out my phone and opened the stopwatch app. Then, I marched to Carol's front door. I rang the doorbell, a long, sustained buzz. No answer. I balled my fist and banged on the door, the sound echoing in the sudden quiet of the street. "Carol!" I yelled, my voice carrying across the lawns. "You have 4 minutes to move your illegally parked vehicle from the fire lane. I am timing you. 4 minutes, Oregon, I will be forced to clear the obstruction myself." There was no response from inside the house, but my declaration had an effect elsewhere. Next door, Dave's patio door slid open. He emerged holding a can of Coors Light, a look of pure, unadulterated joy spreading across his face. He gave me a slow, reverent nod. Across the street, curtains twitched. A few garage doors crept open. An audience was gathering. I turned back to Frank. He was just standing there, torn between his professional liability and the sheer, undeniable justice of the moment. "Frank," I said calmly, "the clock is ticking." He stared at me for another second. Then a grin cracked his weary face. "This is on you, kid. Every damn cent. You're buying my legal fees for the next decade." "Deal," I said. With a newfound sense of purpose, Frank went to work. He unhooked the chains holding the bulldozer to the trailer with practiced ease. The truck driver was now just staring, his phone forgotten. "You are not going to believe this," he muttered to no one in particular. I stood there, phone in hand, watching the seconds tick down. 3:45, 3:44. Each second felt like an hour. This was the stupidest, most reckless, and most satisfying decision I had ever made in my entire life. 2 minutes left. Frank had the ramp down. 1 minute left. He climbed into the operator's seat. 30 seconds, Frank, I yelled. He gave me a thumbs up. 10 seconds, 9, 8. I could feel the collective gasp of the neighborhood. 3, 2, 1. My thumb hit the stop button on the timer. I looked at Frank and gave him a single, sharp nod. Time's up, I said. Frank turned the key. The bulldozer's diesel engine roared to life, a thunderous, magnificent sound that shattered the suburban tranquility into a million pieces. It was the sound of consequences. It was the sound of my patience finally running out, powered by internal combustion. He expertly backed the machine off the trailer, its tracks clanking on the asphalt. He pivoted, aimed, and lowered the massive steel blade. He didn't come in fast. He was a professional, after all. He approached the beige minivan with the slow, deliberate grace of a surgeon. The blade, wide and yellow, kissed the side of the van, from the rear passenger door to the front fender. Then he pushed. The sound was unforgettable. A deep, tortured groan of protesting metal. The high-pitched shriek of 4 rubber tires being dragged sideways against their will. The scrape of the van's chassis against the curb. Frank didn't crush it. He shoved it. He smoothly, inexorably pushed the entire minivan out of the fire lane, scraping it along the red curb before depositing it, with a final nudge, onto the manicured edge of Carol's own lawn. It came to rest at a drunken angle, 2 wheels on the grass, 2 on her flower bed, with a series of deep, vicious scratches running the entire length of its passenger side. The path for the flatbed truck was now completely, unequivocally clear. Frank backed the bulldozer away as if nothing had happened. The entire operation, from engine start to minivan relocation, took less than 90 seconds. An awed, holy silence fell over the street, broken only by the gentle idling of the bulldozer and Dave shouting, "Hell yeah, Alex! Woo!" from his patio, where he was now holding up his beer in a toast. The flatbed driver, looking like he had just witnessed the birth of a new god, shook his head, blinked twice, and said, "Okay then, let's get this counter unloaded." Just as Frank and the driver were masterfully maneuvering the granite slab with straps and the bulldozer's lift arm, the inevitable happened. 2 police cruisers, lights flashing but sirens mercifully silent, pulled up and blocked the end of the street. Carol's front door burst open, and she came flying out, a phone pressed to her ear, her face a mask of apoplectic rage. "It's right there, officer. He destroyed my car with a piece of construction equipment. He's a maniac!" she shrieked into the phone. 2 officers got out. The first, younger and wiry, was Officer Miller. He took in the scene. The bulldozer, the wounded minivan sitting forlornly in a flower bed, the 600-pound slab of granite floating through the air toward my backyard, and me, standing there with my phone in my hand, looking proud. Officer Miller's mouth twitched, and he quickly turned away to cough. The second cop, Officer Davis, was older, with a magnificent mustache, and the weary eyes of a man who had seen the absolute bottom of the barrel of human stupidity, and was now looking at the barrel's sub-basement. He let out a long, slow sigh that seemed to carry the weight of his entire pension. He walked over to me, deliberately not looking at the minivan. "All right, son," he said, his voice gravelly. "I'm going to need you to walk me through this. And if you could, please use small words. My brain is already tired today." I took a deep breath, channeling the spirit of every smarmy lawyer on television. "Officer, it's quite simple. That vehicle," I pointed a steady finger at the minivan, "was illegally parked in a designated emergency fire lane, thereby obstructing both private commerce and public safety. After providing the owner with a generous, documented 4-minute window to rectify her violation, I utilized available equipment to clear said lane. I believe the correct term is proactive citizen engagement." Behind me, I heard a sound suspiciously like a strangled giggle. Officer Miller was now intensely studying the stenciling on the fire lane. He's not technically wrong, Sarge. It is a fire lane." Carol rushed toward us, her face blotchy and red. "He destroyed my car! My brand new minivan! He's a menace to society! Arrest him!" Officer Davis held up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. "Ma'am, please let me handle this. First question," he said, turning back to her. "Were you, in fact, parked in the fire lane?" "That's completely irrelevant," she sputtered. "He took a bulldozer." "Ma'am," Davis cut her off, his voice firm but patient. "It's actually the most relevant question in this entire situation. Please, just yes or no. Carol's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Well, yes, but—" "Thank you," Davis said. He turned back to me. "Son, you do understand that we have a system for this, right? It involves tow trucks. You can't just bulldoze people's property because it's convenient." "There wasn't time, officer," I said earnestly. "It was an emergency of commerce and public safety. The driver was about to leave." At that moment, Dave, my guardian angel of the cul-de-sac, sauntered over. "Officer, I saw the whole thing. The lady blocked the street on purpose. Alex here gave her a very polite 4-minute warning, loud and clear. I heard it from my patio." Davis pinched the bridge of his nose, then spoke into his shoulder mic for a long time. Carol stood fuming, robbed of the immediate satisfaction of seeing me in handcuffs. Finally, Davis clicked off his radio. "All right, here's how this is going to go down," he announced. "There will be no arrests today." Carol let out a noise like a boiling kettle. "Ma'am, you were illegally parked. Your actions directly provoked this unusual response. And you," he said, pointing a thumb at me, "are an idiot with access to heavy machinery. This is a civil matter. You will contact your insurance companies. You will probably contact lawyers. You will sue each other. But from the perspective of the Whispering Pines Police Department, you are two grown-ups who need to learn how to use your words. Now, I want that bulldozer back on its trailer, and I want you people to stay on your respective sides of the street for the rest of the day. Am I clear?" "Crystal, officer," I said with a smile. It was the worst possible outcome for Carol. She got a ticket for parking in a fire lane, and her nemesis was still a free man. I watched her storm back into her house, the door slamming shut behind her. It was the sweetest sound in the world. A week later, my backyard was finished. The nerd nirvana was real. The deck was stained a tasteful, aggressive walnut. The fire pit was installed, and the black granite countertop gleamed under the afternoon sun. I was sitting in a brand new patio chair, sipping a cold beer. Across the table from me were Dave and Frank. We were looking across the street at Carol's house. The dented minivan was gone, replaced by a nondescript rental car. We hadn't seen Carol outside in 7 days. A blessed, blissful silence had fallen over the neighborhood. "I have lived on this street for 20 years, Dave said, taking a long pull from his beer. 20 years of her measuring grass with a ruler and filing complaints about unapproved holiday wreaths. That was the single greatest thing I have ever witnessed in my adult life. You're a legend, Alex. A goddamn suburban legend." Frank chuckled, shaking his head. "My insurance guy had a damn aneurysm when I told him. Then he started laughing his ass off. Said he'd be dining out on this story for years." He pointed his beer bottle at me. "For the record, you're still a complete lunatic. But you got guts, kid, guts and a great-looking countertop." He winked. "The slab's on the house. Call it a bonus for providing top-tier entertainment." I raised my bottle. "It was worth it," I said, and I meant it. Every penny of the inevitable lawsuit, every passive-aggressive glare I'll get for the rest of my time here. It was all worth it. My backyard was finally my sanctuary. The silence from across the street was the real prize. The war was over. Or so I thought. About a month later, I was heading out to grab the mail when I saw it. Taped to my front door, another crisp, cream-colored envelope from the HOA. My heart didn't sink this time. I felt a curious thrill. I pulled it off the door and opened it. It was a notice about a new addendum to the Whispering Pines CC&Rs. A slow grin spread across my face as I read it aloud. Section 14, subsection F. Under no circumstances is any resident, contractor, or guest permitted to utilize privately owned heavy machinery, including but not limited to bulldozers, excavators, front-end loaders, or similar construction vehicles, to move, relocate, or otherwise interfere with another resident's legally or illegally parked personal vehicle for any reason whatsoever. I laughed. A full, deep, joyous laugh. I went inside, grabbed a black Sharpie, and wrote a little note at the bottom of the page. When they have to make a rule specifically because of you, you know you've won. I walked back outside and taped the notice back on my door, facing outwards, for the entire neighborhood to see. It wasn't just a letter anymore. It was a trophy,